Hi, my name is Ian Buckley and you are watching MakeUseOf.com. Today we're going to do a simple project with our Raspberry Pi. This is setting up an LED and making it flash from code, and whether you have your Pi set up with a mouse and a keyboard and a screen, or whether you are using a VNC server like I am, or whether you're doing it via SSH, we'll cover how to do it with both of these possibilities today. But before we dive into the code, we need to set up our circuit. You'll need a few simple components for today's project. Obviously, you'll need a Raspberry Pi. You'll also need a breadboard, two LEDs, two resistors. These can be anything from 220 ohm up to 1 kilo ohm, and a few pieces of hookup wire just to attach everything together. Your circuit should look like this. We have the power lines running from the 5 volt and ground pins of the Raspberry Pi, and they run down both sides of the power rails. One of them just powers an LED directly. The other LED is running from pin 12 of the Raspberry Pi, which is GPIO pin 18, into the positive terminal of the LED, which then goes to ground through a resistor. For a more in-depth view of this circuit, head to the article on the main Make Use Of website, where there is a fritzing diagram and also a handy chart to help you get your LEDs the right way round. But once you have everything set up like this, we're ready to plug in our Pi. Once you've checked that you've got your circuit 100% correct, plug in your Raspberry Pi. You should notice that one of the LEDs turns on straight away, and that's because that's just connected straight to the power pins of the Raspberry Pi. But the other one, we're going to have to write some code to make it blink. So we'll do both versions today. We'll do the desktop version and the command line version of coding for the Raspberry Pi. Let's start with the desktop version. So today we're going to be programming using Python. So Python comes pre-installed on the Raspberry Pi Raspbian operating system. So all we need to do is go to the application menu and under programming select Python 3, and that will open the idle IDE. And it opens with this shell, which is very useful for learning the basics of Python, as you can just type Python commands straight into it and they will work. But what we want to do today is make a program that we can use again and again. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to New File, and this will open up a new file for us to put our code in. We're going to create a simple blinking LED program using Python. So to begin with, we're going to need to import a couple of modules. So we start off by importing the rpi.gpio module. This is what we use to talk to our GPIO pins using Python. And we're importing them as GPIO, which just means that we don't have to type rpi.gpio every time we want to access the module. We're also importing the time module because this is what we're going to use to have the pauses between our LED turning on and off. Now we need to do some setup for our GPIO pins. So now we have two parts of our GPIO setup to go through. If you don't understand these two things at this stage, don't worry about it. We're setting the warnings to false on our GPIO pins. We're not going to be doing anything that will damage the pins. You don't have to worry about turning the warnings off. As you get more confident with coding, you'll realize that these things can be quite useful. For today, don't worry about it. Just set warnings to false. For the mode, I learned the GPIO board, which is just pin numbers. So that means if you were to start at the top and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down your GPIO pins, that's how you would determine the numbers. So for example, we plugged our LED cable into pin number 12. Now, if you were using the other numbers, which are BCM, that is GPIO pin number 18, but we'll just use the board numbers. I personally find it easier, but it is worth looking at a chart and just learning that there are the two different kinds so that in future you can use other people's code and not get lost. The next thing we need to do is set up our GPIO pin to output. So we've already said that we want pin number 12 to be our LED pin, and by typing GPIO setup LED pin to GPIO out, all we're doing is saying to this pin, you are going to be an output pin. You don't have to do anything now, but when we ask you to do something, it will be output. And we'll be telling it to output in the next part of our code, which will be a for loop. So let's go through this for loop line by line. So the first line just declares the for loop for I in range 5. That means it will do it up to 5 times. And if you remember, with coding, it starts at 0. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It will do what's in here 5 times total. We start by printing to the terminal or printing to the console that the LED is going to turn on. And then we say our GPIO output, we're telling the LED pin, which is already ready to be an output, to set itself to high. This is what gives the LED its brightness. This is what sends the voltage to the LED. And then we're telling it to stop for half a second. So turn the LED on, wait for half a second. Then we print to the console the opposite. The LED is now turning off. We tell the output pin to go back to a low voltage. The LED will turn off. and it'll stay off for half a second. And this will go through it, as I said, 5 times before automatically quitting the program. And now all we need to do is save our file. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save it as blink2.py because I've already made this once before. It will automatically save it as a .py file, which is a Python file. Click Save, and once it is saved, you can just go up to the Run menu here and click Run Module. And provided you haven't made any mistakes in your code, it should just work. As you can see here, it's telling us each time it goes round on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, a total of 5 times. And hopefully you can also see on the screen now that the LED attached to my Pi is flashing on and off. Now, if you make any mistakes in your code, the shell will tell you. So let's say, for example, you forgot the little colon here on your for. If you try and run that module, you'll get an error. If you look here, it says invalid syntax, and it shows you which line it is. So if you're having that problem, just check over your code once again, check over the video once again to make sure you've got it right, and you should be able to get it going. So we've covered how to do this code in the desktop version of Raspbian. But what if you are doing this completely from the command line? So most of the time I use my Raspberry Pi over SSH. I'll use PuTTY and I'll have nothing attached to the Raspberry Pi, no screen, no keyboard, no mouse. I'll just be remotely accessing it. Well, I can make exactly the same program from the command line. So we're going to use the Nano editor and we're going to create a Python program called blinky.py. And by opening it up, we are given a quite basic but quite powerful editor. I'm just going to put the code in as I've already typed it out once. And it's exactly the same. You don't need to change the code in any way. You do have to be careful that you do all the indentation correctly, as it won't do it automatically for you. But you've got your code in there, you're ready to save it, and the way that you save it is by pressing Control and then X. And you'll see at the bottom, it will say Save Modified Buffer, yes or no. So you just type Y, and then it'll say what file name to write to. So you can change the file name here if you wish, but I've already said blinky.py, and I will open it like that. So now, once again, we have our finished program, and the way to run it is you just type Python, and then the name of the program. And once again, you should see on the command line, it will say LED turning on and off. And once again, hopefully you can see nice footage of my LED turning on and off. So there we have it. We've created a simple circuit, and we've shown you 2 ways to make a simple program to control your GPIO pins and therefore an LED on a breadboard. With this knowledge, you can do a whole host of Raspberry Pi beginner projects. Check the main Make Use of website. We have a bunch of articles there which will help you get started. And of course, there's an article for this video on the main Make Use of website. But for now, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to the Make Use of YouTube channel for more weekly tech tips and giveaways. Cheers.